Chinese bride thought no one wanted her, until a little girl whispered, "Can you be my mommy forever?" Maylin stood at the edge of the community hall with her back lightly pressed against a pillar, as if the building itself were the only thing keeping her upright. Red lanterns hung in careful rows above her, their soft glow painting everything in warmth she did not quite feel. The scent of steamed dumplings, sweet rice cakes, and oranges filled the air, mingling with the sharp bite of winter coats shaken free of cold. Laughter rose and fell like music. Families greeting one another, couples walking side by side, hands brushing with an ease that made her chest tighten. In her hands she held a length of red silk, ribbon meant for brides to tie wishes onto a wooden arch at the center of the hall. The ribbon was smooth and beautiful, embroidered with tiny golden characters for happiness and long life. May had volunteered to hand them out, the way she always volunteered for the quiet tasks, the ones that didn't require being seen too closely. She told herself it was enough to be useful. Wanting more had once felt dangerous. At 32, she had learned how easily people measured a woman's life. They smiled politely and asked questions that sounded innocent but carried sharp edges. "Why not married yet? Are you too picky? You're so kind, how strange." She had stopped explaining that kindness did not protect you from abandonment, that loving deeply could still leave you alone. Years ago she had believed promises whispered over shared meals and long walks. Years ago she had planned a future that never arrived. Since then she kept her hopes folded small, tucked away where they couldn't hurt her again. A group of children rushed past her, paper dragons bobbing, shoes squeaking against the polished floor. May smiled automatically, stepping aside to make room. She knelt when a little boy tripped, brushing dust from his knees and offering him a tangerine. His mother thanked her distractedly before sweeping him back into her arms. May watched them go, something aching quietly inside her chest, familiar as an old bruise. She moved between tables, refilling trays, straightening flyers, for the adoption fair being held, alongside the New Year celebration. The posters showed smiling children and hopeful words about forever homes. May had signed up to help because it felt safer to give than to dream. Helping children find families was noble, practical, selfless. It did not require her to imagine herself as someone chosen. As the afternoon wore on, the crowd shifted. Some families left with tired children asleep on shoulders. Others lingered, talking softly with volunteers. May answered questions, smiled, bowed her head politely. Her voice was gentle, careful not to take up too much space. Inside, she repeated the familiar mantra, "You're fine. This is enough." That was when she noticed the little girl by the window. She stood apart from the noise, her small figure outlined by pale winter light filtering through the glass. Two neat braids framed her face, tied with simple ribbons. She traced slow circles on the fogged window, watching the world outside as if it held a secret only she could see. There was no adult hovering nearby, no hand tugging her closer to a table. She was not crying. She was simply waiting. Something in May's chest shifted. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle the child. From a nearby table, she picked up a warm dumpling wrapped in paper and crouched to the girl's level. "Hi," May said softly, holding it out. "Would you like one?" The girl turned, her eyes dark and steady. She studied May's face with an intensity that made May suddenly aware of her own breathing, her own heartbeat. After a moment, the girl accepted the dumpling with both hands. "Thank you," she said politely. "What's your name?" May asked, keeping her voice light. "Leon," the girl replied. Her voice was small but clear. "I'm 5. "That's a beautiful name," May said. "Are you here with your family?" Leon shook her head. "I'm here with the aunties," she said, glancing toward a group of volunteers across the room. "But I'm waiting." May smiled gently. "Waiting for what?" Leanne took a bite of the dumpling, chewing carefully before answering. "My forever." The word landed between them, heavy and fragile. May felt her throat tighten. She had heard the term before, printed on flyers and spoken in hopeful speeches, but hearing it from a child's mouth was different. It carried belief, certainty. "That sounds important," May said after a moment. Leon nodded solemnly, then looked at May again, as if something had just clicked into place. She took a small step closer. The noise of the hall seemed to fade, replaced by a strange stillness that made May feel as though the world had narrowed to this single moment. The girl leaned forward, standing on her toes. She raised one hand to partially cover her mouth and whispered,
"Can you be my mommy forever?"
For a heartbeat, May could not breathe. Her mind raced, searching for the right response. The responsible one, the one that would not hurt a child. But her body betrayed her. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them, blurring the lanterns, the people, everything but the girl in front of her. May had spent years convincing herself she was invisible, unwanted, easily overlooked. And yet here was a child looking at her as if she were the answer to a question. May didn't know she had been asking. "Oh," May whispered, the word barely a sound. Leon watched her carefully, not afraid, not embarrassed, just hopeful. May lowered herself fully to the floor so they were eye to eye. Her hands trembled as she reached out, stopping just short, giving the child time to pull away if she wanted. Leon didn't. She slipped her small hand into May's as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Her palm was warm, her grip surprisingly firm. The touch sent a quiet shock through May's chest. Something opening, something breaking free. I don't know if I'm what you're looking for," May said honestly, her voice thick. "I'm very ordinary." Leon tilted her head. "That's okay," she said. "I like ordinary." A soft laugh escaped May, half sob, half disbelief. Around them, the hall continued as before, voices, footsteps, music. But May felt as if time had paused just for them. She realized, with a sudden clarity that made her chest ache, that for the first time in years, she was not standing aside. She was being seen. She squeezed Leon's hand gently, afraid that if she held too tightly, the moment would disappear. "Why me?" she asked, unable to keep the question in. Leon shrugged, crumbs clinging to her lips. "You looked lonely," she said simply. "And lonely people know how to stay." May closed her eyes, letting the truth of that sink in. In that quiet space between heartbeats, she felt something shift, not certainty, not answers, but the fragile beginning of hope. Spring arrived quietly, as if unsure it was welcome. The cold loosened its grip day by day, and in the small courtyard behind the family services building, pale petals drifted from a single flowering tree. Maylin stood beneath it, looking up as one petal landed on her sleeve and stayed there. She didn't brush it away. For so long she had lived as if anything beautiful was temporary, something to be careful with. Now she let herself stand still and feel it. Leon darted in circles around her, shoes tapping against the stone, laughter spilling freely from her mouth. She wore a yellow dress that Mee had sewn herself after watching too many late-night tutorials. The stitches not perfect but strong. Every time Leon spun, the skirt flared, and she laughed harder as if joy were something physical she could summon at will. "Mama, look!" Leon called, holding up a handful of petals. "They're like little clouds." May smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. The word mama still sent a soft tremor through her chest every time she heard it. In the beginning, it had felt too big, too sacred, like wearing a crown she hadn't earned. Now it felt like breathing, natural, necessary. The months between the adoption fair and this day had been long and full of waiting. Forms stacked neatly on her kitchen table, interviews where May had sat with her hands folded, answering questions about her childhood, her work, her capacity for love. Nights when she lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator, doubts pressing in from all sides. Who did she think she was? What if she failed? What if love wasn't enough? And yet every doubt was met with something smaller and stronger. Leon falling asleep on the couch with her head on May's leg. Leon insisting they eat dinner together even if it was just noodles and greens. Leon waking from a nightmare and reaching out, not crying, just whispering, "Mama," into the dark. Each moment stitched them together more firmly than any promise ever had. The day Leon moved into May's apartment, it had rained. May remembered standing in the doorway, watching the child step inside cautiously, as if the space itself might reject her. May had knelt and opened her arms without thinking. Leon had run into them, burying her face against May's chest, as if she had always known where she belonged. May had held her and realized that this was what courage looked like. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to love anyway. Now in the courtyard, a social worker stood nearby, smiling as she watched them. Papers waited on a small table, neat and official. The final signatures, the last step. May's heart beat steadily, not with panic, but with a deep, grounded calm she barely recognized as her own. "Mama," Leon said, tugging gently at May's hand. "After this, can we get dumplings?" May laughed softly. "Of course we can." "Forever dumplings?" Leon asked, eyes shining. "Forever dumplings," May promised. When it was time, May sat at the table and picked up the pen. Her name looked strange on the page, as if it belonged to a braver version of herself. She signed anyway, her hand steady. When she was done, she set the pen down and felt something settle into place, like the final note of a song. Leanne climbed into her lap without being asked, small arms wrapping around May's neck. "It's done," Leon whispered, as if afraid the words might break the moment. "It's done," May echoed. Later, as evening approached, lanterns were lit in the courtyard. Not the grand kind from festivals, just simple ones strung gently between branches. The air smelled of warm food and new grass. May and Leon sat together on a low bench, sharing a box of dumplings, steam rising between them. Leon leaned her head against May's shoulder. "Do you remember when I asked you?" she said suddenly. May did. She remembered every detail, the fog on the window, the warmth of a small hand in hers, the way the world had narrowed and expanded all at once. "I remember," she said. "I was scared," Leon admitted. "What if you said no?" May swallowed, emotion rising in her throat. "I was scared too," she said honestly. "I thought I wasn't enough." Leon considered this, then shook her head with great seriousness. "You were lonely," she said. "Lonely people stay, I knew." May closed her eyes briefly, letting the truth of that wash over her. For years, loneliness had felt like a flaw, something to hide. Now she understood it differently. Loneliness had taught her how to listen, how to notice, how to hold on. As the sky darkened, lanterns floated upward, released one by one. Leon watched them with wide eyes. "They're going to forever too," she said. "Yes," May replied, wrapping an arm around her daughter. "They are." In that moment, May realized she no longer felt like a woman standing at the edge of rooms, holding ribbons meant for someone else's happiness. She was here in the center of her own life, with a child who had chosen her not in spite of her quiet, her ordinariness, her past, but because of it. Forever, she understood now, was not a grand promise made once. It was dumplings after paperwork, petals caught on sleeves, small hands reaching out in the dark and finding someone who stayed.